There's no way that you can be, your chicken is that cheap and truly be pasture raised. There is no way you can buy a 800-acre farm in the mountains of Arkansas, which was an old confinement chicken farm with all the chicken houses still there. And how are you going to make that pasture raised?
Maybe our government could potentially incentivize healthy food for once. Maybe tax things that are causing us to be killing ourselves over the long run.
People kind of caught on that organic isn't exactly maybe what they thought it was, because again, it's just switching the feed. That's the only difference.
We shouldn't be responsible for feeding the world. We should feed our communities.
What would you do with the time machine to go whisper back in Catherine and Tanner's ear, don't do this, or do it differently?
Warning, may contain regenerative farming, pigs castration, health washing, nutrition, and/or peanuts. I am Woodstock.
Super excited to have y'all on. I think regenerative farms. I said that weird, but we have a ton of items to cover. So let's jump right in. I want to start with what I feel is the most important thing we need to talk about. How was it? Like, describe your emotions when you first castrated a pig.
Pretty nervous, honestly. I was so scared to screw it up. And being a male myself, it was just very, I don't know.
Traumatizing?
Yeah. Like, gosh, I can't do this.
I was a backseat driver, of course. Well, are you sure? Is it deep enough? Oh, no, I don't think it's deep enough. Oh, are we hurting him? Is he okay? Is he okay? Are you doing that right? Do I need to look it up on YouTube again? Should we watch the video again?
So you do banding? What's the process?
No, pigs, unfortunately, you can't band, so there's no easy way out of it. You have to
use your teeth.
Go in there with the teeth. Yep. And no, you have to use a knife. You can't band them. You can't like squeeze them because of the way that, I guess we were going to explain this, the way that the scrotum is attached to the body. They don't hang, so you can't get a band around them.
You have to go up in there. Do you have to like tie them down, or like what? Do you knock them out first?
No, you just do it young enough to where they're easy to handle. Okay. So ideally within the first 21 days.
They're little babies. It's much more humane to do it when they're just this big.
Doesn't sound more humane, but I get it. They're just babies.
Yeah. Right. The research, for whatever that's worth, says that they can't feel the pain if it's done within the first week, but who knows if that's bullshit.
That's what's told you to
make us feel better.
Yeah.
Because neither of you came from ranching or anything of this sort, right? You're both, for lack of a better word, city people.
For the most part, I did 4-H growing up. So I lived on a little bit of land like inside a city. So I definitely wouldn't say full-blown meat business or full-blown ag, but I was fortunate enough to, have a horse. And
did you have any mentors when you decided to jump into this? Because I knew you before. I think you were doing like oil fields, Tanner, and you were doing pharmaceutical sales. And then one day you guys are like, oh, by the way, we're now farmers. Do you have like a support system of people like that knew what they were doing and kind of helped you along the way, or do y'all just start shooting and hope you're hitting the mark?
Did not have a support system.
Yeah, we didn't have the University of YouTube.
Nice.
Really, like none of our neighbors, no one in really the whole county, or much less Texas in general, is doing it. I mean, there's tons of like small scale homesteads and people that have done the same thing. We've followed in their paths, but as far as like resources, like in face, like people that you can talk to, not really. It's just kind of, it was at the time where I guess Instagram was getting really popular, and so it was really easy to find like people that were doing what we wanted to do across the country. So it wasn't as important, I guess, to have somebody like locally or a mentor that we could sit down and talk with. It just felt like, with the way technology is getting, and it's just like there's never been a better time to learn something new without having that face-to-face interaction, because you can kind of find people all over the world that are doing what you want to do and just learn from them. So a lot of it was YouTube.
It would have been very helpful to have some sort of mentor, but you got to think in the area that we are in, and especially in Texas, like the ranchers are mostly cow-calf producers. So they have their mama cows, they have a bull, they make their money on selling calves. So they sell the calves when they get weaned, say 6 months, 500 pounds, 600 pounds, and then they're done. Then they start the whole process over. And we're like, well, we don't want to do that. Like, we want to raise chickens too, like for meat, not just like laying hens with some few eggs. So, why I guess you can say like we had neighbors at ranch and stuff, had the regenerative piece and the direct to consumer meat piece. Like, we're not just raising livestock, we are raising meat. And it's such a rewarding process because we get to see what those ribeyes look like and those pork chops. But it was definitely difficult getting started because we didn't really know where to turn besides YouTube. But thank goodness for YouTube and Google.
I mean, it seems to me that regenerative farming is so off the mainstream that had you had mentors, you probably wouldn't be doing it the same way that you are now, versus being able to see different parts of the world and how they're doing it, being able to pick the pieces that you like best and then incorporating it into your process.
We had to unlearn basically things we read in books, because honestly, even from regenerative producers, because climate is everything in Texas. So we didn't even have a regenerative mentor or book to read that was based in South Texas, where it gets to be 105 degrees. You know, you kind of have your mainstream guys that might be in Pennsylvania, but what works in Pennsylvania, it sure as hell not going to work in 105 degrees in Texas. So we had to like kind of keep it in mind. Like, it's great advice to have, but okay, would that really work in our climate? And I wish I would have known that probably sooner, to be like, okay, these guys, why they're great mentors, like, you got to think like, how is this going to work in my environment? And
so that definitely would have been helpful to have someone local to us. But that being said, like, if we had tried to do this 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, there would have been no resources at all. So like you mentioned, we probably wouldn't have even gone down that hole, because we would have just been kind of stuck in our own little, I don't know, geographical echo chamber of this is how it's done and this is what everyone does, and it's not having the resources or the
don't
inspiration.
Know there's another option.
Yeah, right. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
So that kind of leads me into a question that I've been I know a little bit about, having known you from before y'all started it, but I never have really delved in with you like what it was to actually get that started up. So let's kind of start from the beginning with your name. Where did that come from?
So when Tanner and I were both working full time, we decided we wanted to have the homestead country life, which quickly exploded. But that started with buying land with a quote free house that the realtor sold us on. I was incredibly excited about the free house, but Tanner was not as excited about the free house, since we didn't have any money to do anything with the free house. I mean, make it worth something. So we spent the first couple years of our marriage and owning the property, building up this quote free house. And it was so much fun and so much hard work. And it's just, I don't think very many people would say a wonderful way to start a marriage, but it was the way we started our marriage. And
we came back from our honeymoon, and it was coming into June, and we didn't have AC in the house.
Oh no.
Like, we didn't have walls. We had a shower curtain for a door. Our kitchen table was a stack of sheetrock that was sitting in the kitchen.
But it was the sweetest thing, because when we came back from our honeymoon, his parents had snuck into the house. Not there was any sneaking into. You just open the door, go through an open
Walk
window.
through the hole in the front.
But they had installed a window unit and had like...
And one bedroom was like climate controlled. We could escape.
You hid in there?
Yeah.
Yes, it was the sweetest thing ever.
Yeah.
And a couple like gifts. So it was, they were so kind to do that. But.
Yeah. So I guess really the catalyst for all of this happening was that we both ended up in Victoria, Texas after college. She got a job out of college, and then I followed her there. And we hated Victoria. So we wanted to get out of Victoria. And
we didn't hate Victoria. It was just like we were living.
We didn't hate it.
in the
We just-
apartment. Like,
yeah,
we wanted to get out in the country.
We were in an apartment and
You
just
don't know that many people.
didn't like really living in Victoria. And
we were
neither of us-
transplants too.
yeah, neither of us were from there, so we didn't know anybody, and we're like just kind of drove around on the weekends. We're like, man, this is a nice area. Let's just get out of the city. And so that's how we kind of stumbled into the property. We had no intention of starting a farm or even a homestead, really. We just wanted a couple acres that Catherine could have a horse on, and a nice little country house. And like Catherine said, the realtor kind of worked his magic and convinced us to get 57 acres with a free house. And it was free because it didn't appraise. Like, it was worthless. Like, it wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when, like, before y'all had done any work, and it was literally a shack,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
it
looked like you're driving up to a horror movie.
It was a 100-year-old home,
Right.
Because what year was this? 2000.
We
Was it
we
15,
purchased
16?
it in the end of 13, so yeah, probably 15
So,
or 16 when we met.
Almost exactly 100-year-old
Mhm.
home that had been used for hay storage.
Mm-hmm.
There were literal holes in the floor.
Mhm.
I remember helping you out, hanging up some doors, and the walls were kind of leaning the wrong ways. But it looks beautiful now. And because of that, y'all, we're at a perfect spot, even though you didn't know it at the time, to jump into what you're doing now. So what was the catalyst to make you decide to go the crazy route of doing something as difficult as a regenerative farm? And maybe let's start off with, what is a regenerative farm? I cannot say that word.
Well, coming back, we never answered your first question about how I came up with the name. Yes. So we were finishing up with the house. It kind of got to the point, well, it's never finished, right? It's never finished, but to the point to where we were comfortable. And that's when we started toying with, let's start raising some livestock. So we had some cattle, and then we were like, oh, let's start, get a few pigs, and let's try this whole chicken thing. And right then is when we're like, okay, well, let's call it something. What are we going to call it? And at the very end of the project, with the farmhouse, we were in the rafter and we saw a date on when it was built, and it was August 24th, 1915. We were like, there's our name. Like, we're going to do this thing and we're going to call it 1915 Farm, because it's kind of like, if we didn't have this property, if we didn't make these sacrifices on basically living in this home for 2 years that wasn't livable, we would have never had the property to ever be able to start something like this. So it's when we decided to name it 1915 Farm.
And I love it. It's great.
And it also is like a ode to the way that we wanted to raise our animals, even though it was just a hobby at the time. We knew that we wanted to have them out on the pasture and just living life like livestock should, and that's kind of what they did back in the early 1900s. And so it's kind of double meaning, I guess.
I never thought of that.
Circle. Mm-hmm.
I love it.
The way they used to be raised before confinement and CAFOs. And getting into the regenerative piece, we were super uneducated, like we've kind of already talked about. And we were so naive and oblivious to even know how meat was raised in this country. Like, we never thought about it. We had our full-time jobs. We came home, we worked on the property some, we worked on the house, and then we ate our chicken breast and we ate our ground meat and never thought twice about it. And it wasn't until we watched the food documentary Food Inc. to where we really started getting interested. At first, watching the documentary, I'm like, oh, it's BS. Like, it's biased. Like, this isn't real. Like, we don't raise pigs in gestation crates where they can't never turn around. Like, why? Why would anyone do that? Or, man, we don't keep, big steers in feedlots and not give them hardly any shade out of the elements and feed them copious amount of, grains and all sorts of stuff and drugs to make them grow faster. Like, we're not doing that. And then I researched it, and we do. So that's just how it's evolved over the past 100 years. And that's when we were like, well, let's do something different. Like, that's messed up. Like, we shouldn't be, like, it's not sustainable. Like, it's not good for our health. It's not good for the environment. It sure isn't good for these animals. So let's raise them how we think they should be raised and just go with it. And that was basically it. And that's when we started very small with we started in all three categories at the same time. So 50 meat chickens, 2 hogs, and like one, it was actually a heifer, was our first like beef animal. And we put them out on pasture and researched on what we should feed them. And, we do grass-fed and finished beef. So as ruminants for the heifer, we didn't feed her anything, and we still offer grass-fed and finished beef today. But researching on how to like properly feed the chickens and the hogs in addition to being on pasture and what to give them. And we just hoped somebody would buy it because we knew we were going to raise it for ourselves. So we were like, well, that's kind of a lot of meat. Like, let's just raise a little bit more and see if anybody's interested. And we were scared to death. We didn't think anyone would buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive. Like at the end of the day, I mean, while, you know, I'm not going to say it's expensive, but it's expensive compared to what we're used to paying in the grocery store. On the way over here, I saw $1.49 Boston butt roast pound. It's so incredibly cheap. Like I don't even know how that works at all.
And what would it cost per pound for y'all?
We're talking $25 a roast. So much more than that.
$8.50, $9, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not killing it by any means. So I'm like, how? And you know, the reason why they're able to raise that roast or that pig for so cheap is because it's raised in confinement and has a horrible life.
It goes back to exactly, you know, why do we do this? Well, it's because we can get it for $1.49 a pound. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, it's twofold, right? It's at the end of the day, consumers want cheap meat. So a lot of it's educating consumers on like, this is why like we do what we do.
So a big part of it is, you know, the ethical side of things. You feel like these animals deserve a good life.
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
is like, that's, I mean,
I think that's what started it for us.
that's what started it. I mean, when you see those pigs, and we raise pigs, and we've got 300 pigs. I mean, and the fact that they go inside this like stinky barn and like they never get to like wallow. They never get to go in the dirt. They never get to feel the dirt on their little bitty hooves. And they have snouts that are made to root. Like they're raised on concrete or they're raised on slats. They're like, they have to dock their tails because they're so bored they're going to bite them off of each other.
Really? Oh,
Yes, pigs are incredibly smart. They're said to be as smart as like a 3-year-old.
they're smarter than dogs, right? They're supposed to
For
be
sure,
very
yeah.
intelligent.
They're crazy smart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They taste so good too.
Yes, they're delicious. And so it really just like it really just goes back to answer your question. It's like if we're gonna do this, we gotta do it right. Like let's just do what we feel like is right, and that's just letting a pig be a pig.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So really it got to the point it was like, if we're going to keep eating meat, we're going to raise it ourselves. If we're going to raise it ourselves, we're going to do it this way. That's kind of how it cascaded.
So when you guys started up, what were the biggest growing pains? Like you now have a lot of education from just trial and error. What would you do with the time machine to go whisper back in Catherine and Tanner's ear, don't do this or do it differently?
I don't think I would change anything because it's just like the regenerative meat space. There's so many unknowns, and so much of it again is just figuring out what works in your climate. Like the CAFO is more of a cookie cutter approach, you know, and when you're
CAFO, what's that?
concentrated animal feeding operations. So when you have like 60,000 head of cattle in a feedlot, or like
So like the
10,000,
traditional way.
yeah, what is developed since they really took off in the 50s with chicken and then 70s with cattle and pigs. So they haven't been around super long, but
So it's pretty recently that we've gone to this more like giant corporation manufacturer style of meat processing, huh?
Mhm.
Or not just processing, but the raising of the meat.
Production, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So when you, first off, define what is regenerative. Why do they use that word? I don't think we've touched on that.
Well, it started as sustainable, and then like everyone switched over to regenerative.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It's I mean, we don't love the term, but I guess it's the best way to describe like what our vision is and what we want to do with our farm. But
it's working with nature. It's
Yeah.
working with nature and building the soil. And,
using as little outside inputs as possible. So not relying on chemical fertilizers to grow grass, because we're utilizing the manure from our poultry and our pigs to fertilize the ground.
So you've got how many chickens?
Gosh,
right now we have 7,000 on farm.
And then you have them in kind of a pen that's it's mobile, right? You move it how many? You said every day?
Yes. Every day on the bigger ones. Like if they're pretty little, then they'll every other day. But they're called mobile range pasture coops. And it's like the best of both worlds. It's the best way to give them the protection they need, but it's also the best way to let them have a great life and regenerate the soil.
Actually be a chicken
And actually
see
be a
the
chicken.
sun,
Eat grass, eat bugs.
Feel the
bark
wind,
at each other.
fertilize the ground. And so, yeah, they get moved every day. And so a lot of that is to build the soil.
So they eat the worms and the bugs. They take a dookie on the grass. You move it. That land gets to benefit from all the nutrients from the chicken, which then allows you to grow better feed for the cows,
right?
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the cattle graze the grass, and it, what the cattle piece, it's really important that they don't overgraze, because when cattle eat, if you leave the right amount of forage on the ground, like, it'll actually stimulate root growth. And as your native grasses grow deeper into the ground, you get more water infiltration. You can build topsoil instead of stripping topsoil by using synthetics. What else?
You're not exposing as much soil to the sun.
Yeah, the soil temperature drops because you have ground cover, so
Less evaporation and
less
all that.
evaporation, less like desertification.
To have a field full of forage, you're going to have less runoff when it does rain.
Right,
So,
erosion control. So yeah, it's kind of like an endless amount of positives. The negatives are really just, it's extremely labor intensive. It seems easy to just like let the animals do what animals do, but
They are animals.
yeah,
and then they do what they want to do, like run out.
as far as comparing it to a conventional model, like, it's extremely inefficient.
Yeah.
It requires a lot more labor, a lot more infrastructure.
I mean, land per head of cattle, what do y'all typically need for what you do versus the mainstream way of doing it?
So the standard in Texas is, I mean, there's West Texas and then there's South Texas and there's Central Texas, so based on rain, but it's kind of like said to be anywhere from like 5 to 10 acres per head.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot, and that's just even for a herd of mama cows. So we don't typically go by those metrics because we run a stocker operation, which means that like we're bringing in weaned calves, or we're bringing in calves that weigh maybe 700 or 800 pounds, and we're finishing them on grass, so they never go into a feedlot. And we do that because of the amount of land we have, and oftentimes, most of the time while we're working on it, grazing is seasonal, so it's best to bring in cattle like say April, and so they can graze through part of the summer, or if we have any winter forages planted, we can bring in more cattle around September and graze them through winter. It doesn't always work out just perfectly, but that's the goal we're getting to. Like right now, with the horrible drought that we had, basically last fall, we had to carry a lot of cattle over through the winter. So that means bringing in hay and losing a bunch of money on that. But it's hard to say what the carrying capacity is, basically what you're asking on an operation like ours, because it depends on rainfall in South Texas, on what kind of forage that we have.
And so I guess it's less on the space the cattle has, more on like how much grass can grow for them to feed on and go around and graze. And then with pigs on the same land, do you have them like partitioned off, or do they just kind of stay on their own?
Yeah, the pigs are in their own pastures, but they're rotated as well, just like the chickens and the cattle are. So the cattle are kind of the common denominator that benefit from the chickens, and the pigs work essentially by growing grass, but the chickens and the hogs never really cross paths.
So the benefit from the chickens for the fertilizer is clear. What benefit does the pig? Is it like the rutting and like turning up the field?
Yeah, same benefits, just kind of in a different way. So the chickens will scratch through the soil and kind of stimulate growth that way, and their manure's super high in nitrogen. And pigs, they just kind of destroy everything. So they can really like clear out thatch or brambles, and just like kind of invasive woody plants that you don't want, or if there's like a wooded area that you want to clear out, pigs are great for it. They also root in the pastures looking for bugs and other tasty treats. And so as long as it's managed in a way that they're not turning it into a moonscape, they stimulate growth as well, and their manure is extremely beneficial.
We feel like it's almost just as beneficial as chicken manure.
Yeah, from what we've seen, it seems to grow grass just as good, if not better, in some soil conditions.
So you move chickens every day. How often do you move the pigs?
Not as often. Maybe it just depends on. We have several pastures of different aged pigs. So we have our sow pasture that might be pregnant. We have the pasture where the nursing sows are. We have a pasture where their weaned piglets go on free choice feed. And then we have our quote finishing pasture. So they're all getting rotated every couple months. We did buy a new property about a couple years ago that we've been struggling with. It is more sandy, and the hogs really do destroy that. So this spring we're super excited because they've gone in and they were there for quite a while, and they've really cleared everything out, like brambles, like weeds. And so we're super excited because we're going to seed some grass and we're going to see how it comes back. So it's just, like I mentioned earlier, like you might think you have it down at our first property where our soil is more of like a dark soil. But the sandier one we're struggling with right now. So
see, that's the thing that I kind of want to like get into. You mentioned that as far as sustainable and regenerative farming in this area, are y'all alone, or are there other people around that do this? Or did you have to just figure out the climate like just from no help at all?
There's a few local guys that do what we do. But not at our scale. So 1915's taken quite a few big steps in the past couple of years, and I feel like you have like the homestead step where you kind of like raise your own animals, then you might have like the farmer's market step to where you kind of raise enough to feed a few people, and then you probably take another step to where you can still handle that amount by yourself and feed a few more people.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people jump into like home delivery or spread out to several farmers markets on the weekends.
And then you're at the step where we're at, and that's where we have a team that helps. And there's a lot of benefits to that, but there's also a lot of challenges to that too. So
managing is never fun.
Managing is hard, and adding on the meatery piece, like Tanner and I are constantly pulled in different directions. So it's been interesting there.
Yeah, that's exciting. You guys are processing your own meat now, right? How long you been doing that?
We opened in September. Our first.
Not for public, but we were opening with staff to be able to sell our meat online.
Okay. And 100% online and shipped. You don't have like a counter that people can come into, right?
Not at this time, but it's the goal.
That's in the works?
Yeah. We have got to get this working smoothly before we take that next step.
Yeah, so it evolved from, like Catherine mentioned earlier, kind of just a homesteading project. We wanted to raise our own meat. We both had full-time jobs. As a year or two went by, we realized we were really passionate about this, and that there was also a huge opportunity to offer this type of meat in the market. There just wasn't really anybody doing it in the area. We were also positioned in a part of Texas that doesn't have a huge demand for it. We're 2 hours away from, the big cities. So we didn't have like a thriving farmers market in the area that, I'm not going to say it's not thriving, but not one that we wanted to spend
every Saturday at.
So, we're already working, how it is for.
They didn't have the scale to really make sense for your size.
Yeah. And just working 40 to 50 hours a week at another job, and then coming home and working till dark every day on the farm. And
you got to think too, is Tanner and I made the decision early on that we want to do this full time. It's very hard to do something full time on a farmer's market unless you're just driving. Maybe you hire someone and go to several. So
yeah, I'm sure there's some urban areas that it's possible, but we didn't feel that we lived near one of them. And so we made the decision to do a monthly delivery down to Corpus Christi, Rockport, Port Aransas, like the coastal area. And so we took orders all month long, and then one Sunday a week we would drive down. And so we felt like that still gave us 3 weekends out of the month to not sit at a farmer's market, and just 1 weekend out of the month to just go down there, like grind it out all day, get back home late.
We made 35 stops. We were the UPS man. I was really proud of those 35 stops.
It was fun.
Yeah, the skills that y'all must have learned from this, you're so versatile now because you are the UPS guy, but you're also a farmer, but you're also cutting, testicles off. And you're like, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades when you start from scratch like that. What's one skill that you learned that you never thought you'd have to do? Anything like that?
Pretty much all of it. I never thought I'd be castrating pigs. Never thought I'd be cutting meat in a butcher shop.
That's for sure the meaty piece. Yeah. I mean,
are you personally
so over
cutting?
Our head.
Y'all getting your hands dirty on it?
I go in when we're short-handed, because that's kind of the stage we're at in our business right now. As the owners, we fill in where we're short.
Because you started off where you'd raise some, you'd send it to a meat processor, they'd process it, put your little logo and packaging, and then you'd bring it back to your facility to like put it into shipping packages and go deliver it down. And then you started actually shipping them out, which is how we get our meat now. We're all the way over in San Antonio when we can access your meat, which is great. So now you just do 100% of it, beef, cow,
we're
and
working
chicken.
Towards
beef, cow, beef, pig, and chicken.
The chickens, the poultry we don't process in house. Don't have plans to, because we have a great relationship with a processor that handles that, and it's also kind of like the separation of white meat and red meat is really tricky to handle in the same facility.
We really need another building.
Yeah, we don't really want to jump into that at the moment. But yeah, so when we decided that we'd kind of grown it big enough to allow one of us to comfortably quit our job, we made the switch from deliveries to shipping. That was back in 2019. It was really scary. We lost like half our customers when we announced that we were doing that. Because
we were doing it not very profitably.
And
it was free delivery. So we just kind of wanted to get our name out there.
And then I got laid off. So then we were both.
Yeah. So I quit first as we decided. Yeah.
Full time.
I quit as soon as Tanner's company was bought out, but they're like, no, you're fine. You have nothing to worry about. And they're like, okay, and then 6 months later, oh, you're gone.
Yeah, you're a farmer now, so you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we kind of, within 6 months, we were both full-time farmers, and we're like, okay, we got to make this work. And, we wanted to also. We felt like this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, I can always go back to work if this doesn't work out, but, like, let's make this work. And
we had a severance package.
Yeah,
which
I got
was generous.
a severance package, and we spent every dime of it investing in infrastructure as we made the switch to shipping. So we built a fulfillment shop on our farm.
That was our first big investment outside of just land. As you would think we would buy a tractor or something else, some piece of equipment, but we were shipping meat out of a shipping container, and we knew that we could not ship the amount of meat we needed to make a living at it, and out of 4 chest raisers.
Yeah, I remember that little shipping container next to your little farmhouse.
It's still there with the sign. The UPS guy would always get pissed off when he was at our place because it was in the mud, so he'd have to bring his dolly, and we'd hand the boxes over the barbed wire fence, and he'd have to stack them on his dolly. I guess, I mean, it was 8 boxes, but still, yeah. So we knew, like Tanner had mentioned, that if we're gonna do this thing, let's do it. And that was our first big investment, is building a fulfillment center, basically,
with the walk-in freezers, and enough space to store what we hoped would be just tons of orders, that we could, we're not delivering anymore. We're both doing this full time. We need to crank up the dial on
We gotta go.
on the marketing and like let's try to get this to work. And so
get
we
the
were
UPS guy out of the mud and on an actual.
Yes,
Yeah,
he was very happy when we had a road. He's like, "Wow, I remember." Thank goodness.
And it was going great. I mean, we started as a hobby, like I said, in 2017, and the first 3 years of sales, like they were good. They were modest, but they were double-digit growth every year, and we just, the timing of it couldn't have been better. Like we got so lucky that we were in the position we were when grocery stores started running out of meat during COVID. And as unfortunate as it was for so many small businesses, we just kind of
flat out lucked
Right
out.
place,
lucked
right
out,
time.
right place, the right time, and
100%.
Thank you,
luck.
Chinese.
and it's
We're not going to go there on this episode. But
We know them.
yeah, so like you brought up COVID, we had so many instances in the news where these giant meat packing places, which we were talking earlier, you said there's like 4 major meat processors in the nation, and they were having all these issues with whether it was like labor or tainted meat or I'm not in the industry, but I kept reading the news that, hey, your beef's going to go up in cost, and all of a sudden your meat's not that expensive anymore when you compare it to what happened during that time. And did you guys said you saw a pretty large growth during that time, right?
It was insane.
How'd you keep up with it? Just started hiring away, or?
Well, we weren't smart enough to hire right away, I guess, because we weren't sure if it was going to last. And for whatever reason, I guess it's a really big step to hire. Like, we hire people all the time now. We've got 13 people working for us. But at the time, like making that first hire, like knowing you're responsible for someone, like that's like a company thing, with one person. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's one thing when you're responsible for just your husband and yourself or your wife and yourself. But when you bring on an employee that you got to pay and you got to have the money to pay him.
So we're both really hard-headed too. So like we're going to push ourselves as long as possible until we're just like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Like we have to hire someone now.
That's how it goes in entrepreneurship. That's pretty common. Is that most entrepreneurs wait too long to hire. Small business owners, not like, VC funded places.
Yeah. And then when you do hire someone, you have this expectation of like, well, I'm working 1,000 hours a week. What are you? I'm not making any money. Why should I pay?
Yeah, as entrepreneurs, you get paid last too, which is, I mean, it's okay. This is our passion, and we absolutely love it. But so when COVID happened, we should have hired right away. We waited 4 months.
4 months probably.
2020, that was insane. None of us knew it would change the world forever, or we just thought it was going to be temporary and go back. Like, we didn't know. We skyrocketed so much that we weren't sure if it was going to be sustainable, the growth. Yeah. So we didn't want to do anything too rash. Not that hiring one person is, but I don't know. I mean, we could have hired one person. But we just didn't know what was happening because we were January, normal month. February kind of started to tick up. March.
So how do you measure? Like, do you go by how many pounds you ship out each month, or do you have a measurement to kind of help us understand how fast you grew during that pandemic?
We just use sales dollar amount. I
think it was $100,000 we sold in a month in March.
Oh wow! And that was in 2020.
Yeah,
prior to that, we
$30,000 a month.
Yeah.
So it 3x in 1 month.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And that sounds like it was pretty sustainable. It ended up, it wasn't a huge crash afterwards. Did it plateau out, or did it continue growing from there?
That's what I was so scared of. I was like, people are just going to go back to the grocery store
and pull the rug. Like, I mean, you totally expect them to.
Are we depleting our inventory and not going to be there for, our regular customers?
Yeah.
And we did have to, we had to stop subscriptions. We definitely had to do some things. We never ran out of meat. There were times where the store was definitely marked out of stock, but we felt like our grassroots club or our subscription members were like, look, we know you've been with us for a long time. We're not going to leave you. So we would sometimes mark the store out of stock so new customers couldn't buy or something. But yes, it just stayed. And a lot of that was, I think people just decided to try it. And they're like, well, I'm not going back to the grocery store.
Well, it's convenient having not only meat show up on your door. We live in a Amazon world now. And so that's nice when I get that email saying, hey, open this email. And, but also it really just, if you don't care about the ethical side, then you look at the cost and you're like, oh, but there's also the health side. And so between those two items, I've told Treya this a few times. I said, I personally, I'd rather eat a little less meat, but make sure it's good meat. And it's meat that I don't feel terrible eating either. And does that mean I don't go to Bush's Chicken? No, I still do. I still hit up Cane's like a fiend, but I can't do everything, but I can do small little things here and there. And so you brought up your grassroots club. I think that's like the perfect setup because it's something that I think, at least for my paycheck, is sustainable, affordable, but then it's also allowed me to try some new stuff like Treya was pointing out.
Oh my goodness.
So like we have your website pulled up here. Like what are your types of products that, like, if someone's listening to this and they want to, join the revolution, if you can call it that, what would you recommend how they start off? Just like try a few different items, or would you say just jump right into the grassroots? Is that the best way to like start in trying new stuff?
It just really depends on the family or the person.
Yeah, how adventurous you are, how much you like to cook.
How much you like to cook, your cooking style. So we've tried to make different subscription boxes based on families or just people. Like we have our boneless box that is like chicken breast, boneless thighs. Like I'm thinking of a mom like myself that is like, I don't know what I'm going to make until 6 o'clock. Like it's just like your staples. And then we have our foodie box, which is also very popular, but you're going to get things like maybe some beef short ribs or maybe some ossobuco and different more bone-in cuts. And I would probably suggest that's going to be the cheapest option because we pay for the shipping on that. So it's a good way for people to just kind of try it out to see the quality, to see that all chicken just doesn't taste like chicken. All beef just doesn't taste like beef. All pork just doesn't taste like pork. It's not, these are, they're not commodities. They're not all the same. So that would be my suggestion for somebody wanting to try. If not, we do the custom orders too. Maybe someone just wants to have some friends over for a weekend and needs 8 packages of burger patties or something, or smoked bacon burger patties. Get some nice fillets. So
one of the things that we've gotten that at first we're like, what do we do with this? But it's now become like we really enjoy it is the ground chicken. Never would have imagined I'd ever buy ground chicken ever. Never would have ordered it. But then now that we get it, we're like, what are we going to do with this? And she started making like different Asian dishes, and it's perfect for that. So that's nice. We kind of look forward to when we get that ground chicken coming in. But there's the other thing that a good friend of ours, they order from me all the time. They're like, you have to get their whole chickens. And I'm like, they talk it up like it's they like salivate every time they get one in the mail. They're like, yes, we got a whole chicken. But do you have any favorite recipes that you guys have some on the website too, right?
Yes, we have a whole recipe page on recipes.
Yeah, we found people very early on that consumer education is so important to selling a different type of meat that people aren't used to. There's the sticker shock if you were like us and didn't realize where your food came from. You're like, why is this whole chicken $25 instead of $6? And so
it's understandable for consumers to feel that way when they don't understand how it's different.
And we get it. Like, people are busy with their own lives. Like, not everybody has the time to research this stuff and make a ethical decision on where their food comes from. And some people, it's just not in the budget. Like, it's totally understandable. But we found that educating people, whether customers or potential customers or just anyone that stops by the website or Google's grass-fed beef, like, it goes a really long way to helping, like I said, people that are out of their comfort zone that maybe have never heard of ossobuco before. It's like, okay, well, look, we have a recipe for you. This is how we make it, and that's my favorite cut. I never even knew it existed before we started a farm.
Jace had it as steak.
Yeah,
So you
I
didn't
think I
check
had one
So
bite.
the
it's
recipe
not like
website.
Nope.
Oh my gosh, that's
It was
so
a
funny.
good learning experience.
That's so funny.
It's it was eye opening, not mouth watering, but I was like, oh boy.
Oh, you should have called or texted.
you gotta braise it.
No.
Yep. it's
Well,
like a
I'm
stew.
terrible because every time I try to do anything in the kitchen, it doesn't. I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have a wife that makes amazing Mexican food, and so I'm like, yeah, here, try this out. She was in a hurry, and I didn't think to help more. And yeah, next time we will be looking up your recipes for
That's
sure.
so funny.
There's one
Oh
right
my
there.
gosh.
So grass-fed. How do you pronounce ossobuco?
Mm-hmm.
Grass-fed ossobuco with Chinese 5-spice and buttery sweet potato puree. Dang, you guys go real deep. That does look pretty good. So you like braise it. I don't even know what braising means.
Like cooking it in liquid, like
Yeah,
a Dutch
like a
oven.
Dutch
Oh,
oven.
Dutch oven. So it's like
3/4
slow
submerged,
cooking.
yeah.
It lets it like actually get
Usually
like
with
soft.
some like red wine or
Okay.
something acidic that helps
It's one
break
of
it down.
like the healthiest cuts of beef that you can eat outside of liver because it has bone marrow in it. So it's a shank, so it's cut across to where you have the exposed bone marrow that's full of collagen. It's so good for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm trying to. Collagen was the word I was looking for. It's supposed to be a very bioavailable, something that we never really
Mhm.
get in our diet unless you're actively searching it out. Isn't that what I think?
Unless an influencer is promoting like the
Yeah.
collagen, like what are
It's
they
like a
talk
powder they
about?
throw in
Yeah, it's
everything.
like- I'm like, what is that? Like, I don't, like,
I think it makes
how
your
is that
skin
collagen?
stretchy or something,
Like,
so you don't
what's-
get as many wrinkles.
Is it made in
Is
a
that-
lab? Like, I don't.
What? Hey, young Ray. Oh, by the way, anyone who's listening, today is our first time having someone assisting with looking stuff up. We got the TV over here. We're checking out some recipes. We got Rachel on the keyboard. We're trying to figure out what collagen is actually used for. That's the first time I've been able to say, "Hey, look it up." That's kind of fun.
Yeah, like what are those pills?
So collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. This fiber-like structure is used to make connective tissue. Like the name implies, this type of tissue connects other tissues and is a major component of bones, skin, muscles, tendons, and cartilage. Oh, so we need this in every... Okay, yeah,
We're not getting it from McDonald's.
yeah. And the bones, if you use it like with a broth, it's supposed to even take a ton of nutrients out of that as well. So even though you're going to get something that doesn't have a lot of meat on it, having that bone, especially if it's got a lot of marrow in it, will be able to leach into the water.
To know you have good bone broth or chicken stock, it's going to be a little gelatinous. It should not just be liquid. Like it's got to have like a jiggle.
So that's
jiggle,
where
jiggle.
the
That's like the collagen.
That's the collagen.
Yes.
Okay.
But
So-
as for the powders, like I guess they're just like extract. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, the little I know about nutrition is the word bioavailable becomes pretty important when you start getting into supplements, because we've gotten crazy in this world with how many supplements are out there, and we're just shoving all these things down our throat, but then they don't actually absorb into your body. They're just not the right process for us. I think calcium's a good example. You have a lot of calcium supplements that just go in one end and out the other, and you have to have a version that your body actually absorbs and uses. And I've heard that the marrow is probably the best bioavailable version of it. So
Makes sense.
Treya, look up the recipe next time. Or
Yeah.
I'll actually help in the kitchen for once. That's probably better. Sorry, Treya.
But yeah, it makes it a lot. I want to say a lot easier, but we have found that providing people with the resources of how to cook what we're selling them makes people come back a lot.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking about is like, how do you get to the point where this is sustainable? Because I mean, I live in San Antonio, where a good chunk of the population, they couldn't afford your meat. You know, it'd be a huge chunk of their monthly income. And I'm like, it's something that I think everyone should be able to access. So in my, economics-based mind from back in college, when I used to be smarter than I am now, the only way to actually get that cost down is to expand. It's the economy of scale. Is it possible in the U.S. with the amount of land we have to feed our whole entire population using this form of raising, or is the only way we can have that $1.50 meat is to be pumping it full of antibiotics and corn syrup and the way that we've been doing it. Do you see a way to scale it up to where it does get to the point where we can make it more available for everyone?
I mean, the detractors are going to say, no, it's not possible. But, you know, everybody's response is like, how are we going to feed the world with regenerative agriculture? And the way we view it is, we shouldn't be responsible for feeding the world. We should feed our communities. And I don't think that what we do is, I think there's a limit to the scale, but it is replicable. And that's what one of our mentors, Will Harris and Jenny Harris over at White Oak Pastures in Georgia, they were kind enough to bring us to their farm and give us a tour last year.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And it was when we were kind of at this inflection point of, do we build a full-blown like slaughter processing plant or just a cut and wrap butcher shop? And they operate a red meat and a white meat plant. And they showed us everything to kind of help us make our decision. And they really push that. They're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the country.
Yeah, I've actually heard of them. I think they were on Rogan recently.
Yeah.
They have the best accents.
Yeah,
I thought they were like, when I first started listening to them, I thought they were just like, howdy, joking around. And I'm like, oh no, that's just how they talk.
Yeah,
I love it.
Nicest people in the world. But that's kind of they're a huge influence to anybody that's doing what we do. And their message is like, you know, we're one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the country, and we can't scale anymore, but you can replicate this regionally. And we think that's true for sure. But going back to like, can this country be fed on regenerative agriculture? It would take a complete repurposing of the way ag land is used right now. But yeah, I think it's possible. When you think about, 80% of the corn and soy grown in this country is grown for livestock feed, not for human consumption. So these millions and millions of acres in the Corn Belt in the Midwest and the High Plains that you see full of corn and soy, it's going to feed livestock that we've confined into feedlots. So yeah, I mean, it would disrupt the entire nation's farming practices, and it would require, repurposing all of that land. But I mean, those millions and millions of acres used to be grasslands.
That's like similar to healthcare. Like,
yeah,
you can't just we know we have a problem with healthcare in this country, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but like, how do you even dismantle that? And it would be the same thing in the ag industry. Like, how do you just like literally do a 180 and turn it absolutely upside down?
Well, you were saying that, I mean, it's been since the 50s that some of these practices have kind of grown into. And so we're working on 70 years of going in the wrong direction. It's going to take at least that long, if not longer, to redirect and
supported and encouraged by our government to do it this way. So,
which that's kind of what we were talking earlier. And this delves into the political side that didn't want to talk about, but I'm going to now.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you because I kind of want to go back to a little bit of that. Because I truly believe in this stuff. And you talk about making it more affordable to people that can't afford it. But we also need to look at what happened during COVID. Beef prices shot up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a better quality product for those beef prices to go up?
Probably worse, to be honest with you.
So,
for sure.
Who made more money during that time? The big four meat packers that control the beef. 2 of them aren't even American owned. So it gets to be very, very dicey when, you're not even getting a higher quality product, but the price is going up. Whereas for farmers like us, Tanner and I, we've had to do a couple of price increases over the past couple of years, but not immediately during COVID. Our costs didn't go up. What happened is the meat packers had to shut down because it's so centralized and they didn't have the workers.
but they still needed to make those margins, so they just jacked the cost up.
Yeah, it's an extremely fragile system. And
Very fragile. And so the demand skyrocketed because people were freaking out. They couldn't kill the animals. They couldn't slaughter the animals. They couldn't turn livestock into meat. And so these feedlot owners were stuck with all these fed cattle with nowhere to go because they couldn't process them. Small processors that we use, no problems. When you got 15 people, it's okay.
Yeah,
You've got thousands and thousands of plant workers with a virus running throughout, and that shuts down, that affects the entire nation. One plant going down affects the entire nation.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible fragile system. So not only did you have price increases going up for no reason at all, you know, you're not getting a better quality product. You got to think about how we can use land in America to be regenerative. And like Tanner mentioned, like it would take a complete 180 and to change the way we raise things, but we can also meet in the middle with commodity agriculture. Yeah. So sometimes a regenerative agriculture space can kind of feel like you're regenerative or you're commodity, like there's no meat in the middle, but we can most definitely use those thousands, if not millions of acres to grow grass. Thousands or millions of acres sit fallow when it's not prime growing season of corn. Cover crops can be planted during the winter. Texas is the absolute perfect spot to do that. But a lot of farmers don't do that, A, because they're not incentivized. Well, they're starting to be incentivized recently. They don't want to mess with it. They don't make money at it. And this is I'm not blaming the farmers. Absolutely. I'm
why
not
do it if there's
them.
No benefit?
Yeah, I'm not blaming that whatsoever. But at the same time, not only is that land sitting fallow, meaning it's just a dirt field. How many times have you driven through maybe South Texas and you see the farm fields and they're just full of dirt?
Mm-hmm.
Another crop could be planted that not only would build your soil to keep the ground, you know, it's going to not have the ground be exposed. It's going to put more nutrients in your soil by having a plant there. You can bring cattle in, you can graze that plant. Even if it's a monocrop, yes, you can plant something like winter wheat, you can plant oats.
Do cows like marijuana? Curious.
They'd probably eat it. I don't know how to make the beef taste.
It's supposed to be pretty nutrient rich in its raw form. It's only psychoactive if you heat it up, and you know it's actual good supplement. It's anti-inflammatory if you eat it in its untouched form. I imagine there'd probably be quite a bit of nutrients for cows too. Because I bring that up just because we were talking about it last night. That's one of the crops that actually don't destroy the soil as much as some other ones. So maybe Abbott should be looking into making a state-run weed operation for the cows. For the cows, of course, and Jace.
But if you think about it, I mean, that's how you can scale it. Instead of sending the cattle to the feedlot, they would still be grazing, they'd still be pasture raised, they'd still be grass fed.
Yeah, overwinter in fallow fields. You
can scale it and it'll drop the price down. While will it ever get down to, like, granted, can you see what a pound of ground beef is right now?
While she's looking that up, it goes back to what you said earlier. It's about education. You're building value for your product by telling them, hey, this is the alternative, this is the benefit. And so people like myself are willing to pay those prices. And the more people who understand that, maybe not today, but maybe someday they'll be financially to the point where they can add to it. And as it grows and we have that national economy of scale, we can slowly start transitioning, not tomorrow, but soon. So let's see here. The average price of ground beef per pound in the United States is between $3.50 and $7. In 22, it was 4.8, up from 2.4 in 2008.
Yeah, another part of that too is like,
and sorry, go back to that. What was that? It said Canada ground beef is $12.52 Canadian dollars.
Wow.
It's more expensive than our grass-fed ground
Holy
beef.
crap. Oh, wait a second, which is approximately, or $2.49 per pound. Wait a second. Is the Canadian dollar really that off from the American dollar right now? I'm on a little note here, but I thought they were a lot closer. Yeah, it's only 0.74. I don't know. That wasn't adding up in my head. But anyways, to your point.
It also, you know, we like to talk about how expensive food is, but it has to do with your priorities. Like, if $10 a pound of ground beef is too expensive for you, but then you go buy $9 worth of Coke, like, you know, people should have the choice to buy whatever they want, but I just don't feel like they're not apples and apples. You can't complain about expensive meat and then
It's much easier to say you just can't afford it, and not want to adjust your lifestyle.
Right. Mm-hmm. You could, if it was a priority of yours. I think most people could afford it, and we right now, like the percentage of household income that Americans spend on food is the all-time lowest it's ever been.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, back in the 20s or 30s, it was like 55% of household income, which is obviously probably not sustainable, but we say that like it's a pride thing, like we spend less on food now than we ever have, but
is that a good thing?
But we spend it on empty calories. Like, you made a really good point.
Right. It's shit food. And are we really better off because of that?
Well, we're not.
And like, what percentage as our healthcare costs increased, while that tracks the decrease in food price?
How many people are obese or overweight in this country?
We have so much evidence now that the way that we've been eating is what's been causing the epidemic of heart disease, diabetes, all of these things that are plaguing the U.S. that other countries aren't seeing, right? And we know now it is 100% based off how we're eating. Yeah, I'm sure there's some plastics and PFAS that are, adding to it, but that's going to be global. But in the United States, we have a clear indication that our obesity is causing a huge issue. And we have this food that's just not nutrient dense. And so we have to eat a lot. If you're eating just sugar, then you're constantly hungry because your body's still asking for more. If you eat some high quality nutrient dense, whether it's meat, vegetables, or, whatever it is, as long as it has the nutrients you need, then all of a sudden that hunger is curbed. You're not only not a fat ass anymore, but you're actually getting the nutrients you need to be healthy and happy. Mental health right now is constantly in the news. And I, for one, think that a huge part of that is we're not getting the right nutrients into our system to allow our brains to process the dopamine and all of the different chemicals that we need to be happy. Being outside and getting vitamin D is this free, easy thing, but we don't talk about that every day. So let me see here. Americans are getting about 1/3 of their daily calories from empty calories or snack foods.
So what if like that 1/3, that money went into buying something that's better for you? It doesn't have to be meat. I mean, it could be
because a
better vegetables.
A bag of Cheez-Its and a Coke is going to cost you $5.
At least.
I mean,
it's a smaller bag these days too.
You can almost feed a family with a pound of ground beef at that cost.
I almost think that maybe our government could potentially incentivize healthy food for once. Maybe tax things that are causing us to be killing ourselves over the long run. Sugar, I feel, it's a drug that is incredibly addictive that, we need it, but everything gets broken down to sugar in our bodies. We don't need the high amount. Yeah, it's like black tar heroin to our kids. And I feel bad every time I allow my kid to do it, but it's so ingrained in our culture. They go to school and my kid has like a chip on her shoulder because her friends are eating sugar and we tell her not. So we give in, and it's like, I know I'm just setting my daughter up for failure, letting her eat the just highly processed, concentrated, just crap that we have. So that's a great point, Tanner. It's like we need to educate people to understand that there is a better way, and they're going to feel better doing it too. So many countries have imposed a tax on SSBs. So remind me what SSB is? The consumption of SSBs are soft drinks. Okay. So many countries have imposed tax on SSBs to raise revenue and limit their consumption. Some research shows that when the price of sodas increase by 20%, their consumption may decline to similar levels. However, the prediction has not been supported by any study on global. Okay. So, I mean, it can work. Going back to my economic...
It never happened because of the corporate politics.
All right. Who has money right now,
corporations.
Right?
Well, it goes back to also...
Who's paying for those politicians to be in their seats?
And what are we using our land for? To grow corn. What is corn used for? Corn syrup, sugar, Cheez-Its.
So that's living a crazy world right now that actually is going to change. The only way that I can possibly see any change is exactly what we're talking about. It's people like you making Instagram posts, having podcasts that aren't bought off by corporations, and really letting the just average Joe understand, holy shit, we're being blindsided, we're being lied to, we're being poisoned. And so they have to make the decision, okay, I'm not going to purchase that SSB, which is my new term that I just learned. I'm going to understand what high amounts of fructose do to my liver, which causes all the heart disease, which causes all these things. And it's not worth it in the long run. It's not worth it to have that. It's better just to, have a unsweet tea and some ossobuco.
Braised.
Medium rare.
Braised. Do not cook it like a steak. Dear Lord.
And I think sometimes maybe consumers might feel overwhelmed, but it's not an all or nothing approach.
Yeah.
Even if it was just 10 pounds a month, just something just to get started.
Oh, admittedly, we have other meat products other than, I already said, we're going to Cane's. You're not going to get me away from Cane's. There's just zero chance. I'm addicted. But you can do what you can. You can take small steps towards it. And I can attest that once you do get a true quality product, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah.
It's really hard because we've all seen the videos where they're injecting water into meat to make it heavier so it costs more, but you're not getting that actual meat. You're getting dyes, you're getting fillers, you're getting glue. So many butchers have come out and said, they told us to glue this shit together and sell it as a 16-ounce steak. And so knowing where it comes from is so big as far as my opinion is concerned, because you don't know who touched it when it's going through the giant commodity sector. I know exactly who's touched it when I get it from y'all. And I really do appreciate y'all stepping up and doing something that is incredibly difficult. And you did it not knowing whether it was going to be profitable. You did it because you thought it was the right thing. And I can't think of a more commendable thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
We were talking earlier about how corporations, they have the money. So they're going to be paying for advertisement. They're going to be paying for really the education part that we have. And so I think
the food pyramid.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
We need to eat carbs all day long. That's the most important thing.
Carbs and low.
Bread.
I remember seeing Twizzlers saying a low-fat diet, heart healthy. I'm like, Twizzlers. And my uncle, I think he went on a no-fat diet and he ended up gaining 50 pounds. It's like, come on, guys. But we can't blame ourselves. We were lied to. People were paid off. I'm a big science proponent, but what we call science is not actually science half the time. It's some guy paid off a guy that claims something, and then we believe it for decades. We all get poisoned as a nation, and now we're educating ourselves about it. Thank goodness.
Cigarettes used to be good for you.
Oh yeah. I would see. I saw a commercial where the doctor was checking out on a kid. Kid was on the table. He's like, "So what's wrong with you?" And it was like, it wasn't tongue in cheek. That was just how it was.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw the best article the other day. See if you can find. It was a cigarette company that it was right when they decided that cancer was bad and it was actually caused by cigarettes. So they came out with an asbestos filter to make it safer to smoke cigarettes. Can you imagine? It looked like mold growing in it. But this is exactly why I want to do the podcast as well. I don't want to say it's a religion to me. Like, I went from being a very religious person, dedicating my life to a church, and I stopped doing that, but I still have this inner need to do something greater for a greater purpose. And I knew I wasn't going to be making money off this podcast, and hopefully I can to start, getting some employees of my own, but it's really to get the zeitgeist, just the conception of the population around us to understand that there is a way, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just small nudges through each generation. If you think about it has to happen in my lifetime, then guess what? You're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you can just see the huge benefit of the little ripple effect of doing a small thing in your lifetime and like supporting some lost cause that's never going to happen, maybe in the next generation, or more likely 10 generations from now, we could potentially get there. And that's also the smart way to do it. We can't change commodity beef overnight, but we can do the little bit we can each day. Oh, here it is. The Kent cigarettes with the micronite filter.
Gosh.
In 1952, claims that smoking causes cancer caused Kent cigarettes to come out with an asbestos filter to protect its smokers. So this is the stuff that we need to educate each other about. And this is what really pisses me off about some influencers. They find a very profitable product that they can say, hey, this is it. This is life-saving. And they have thousands, if not millions of people that trust them. And they have no idea, and they're just pushing that shit out there.
I literally had to stop scrolling Instagram for that reason. My mental health could not take it because I would get so pissed off. Mainly pushing meat, where I'm like, you're just getting paid so much money to talk about it, and you don't even know what you're talking about. All that's wrong that you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Go into the comment of like, can it change? Will it ever change? I'm going to be a forever optimist, because I think the only way it will change is if we all believe it will. Because if we believe it's going to change, we just have to understand what are the small steps that we need to make in our own personal lives to make that change happen. And I really think the only way that it's going to happen is people in power. We have to slowly start giving up some of that power. And we always like to think of, the governors or the, autocrats from other countries as the people in power. But I think that's the dangerous thought. I think we need to realize that everyone in this room, everyone listening, we're the people in power. We truly are. We have the power to make the decisions in our life and support the small things and make sacrifices of our own lives to help causes that we truly believe in. And we can't do it all. And sometimes we're misguided. But when we do open up our minds and allow like an idea that maybe I grew up thinking one thing, I went to college thinking climate change was a hoax by Al Gore. And now I think that it's something we need to take seriously. And I'm not saying that we need to, burn down the whole establishment, because that's going to cause more harm than anything else. But if you leave your mind open to actually accept that, the way we've been doing it may not have been the right way. Now we have enough evidence where you don't see that, you're kind of a moron. But we need to understand that we have the power. We have the power to not buy that soda and instead put it towards 1915farm.com.
Or just anybody else that does.
Really anyone not everyone's in Texas, because you only delivered to Texas, right?
We deliver nationwide, but it's expensive to ship. Okay. So we feel so grateful for any people out of state, that maybe northern states, it's more affordable to ship to the southern states. But for anyone that's like in maybe California or New York, like, while we'd love to ship you some meat, it's expensive. Like, we don't get breaks from UPS. Like, so we encourage people to go to eatwild.com and find a local farmer there.
Oh, so say that again. Eat Wild?
Eatwild.com. Mm-hmm.
And that's just a conglomerate or a place you can go to find. You're on there with, I imagine Jenny and Will are as well. I mean, everyone knows them by now. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
But another thing that consumers, we have it hard. We're consumers too, but it's the health washing and the greenwashing by the big companies, because they know there's a demand for it.
Oh, okay.
And so talk about getting lost in the weeds on things. Like, as a consumer, I'm super educated in the meat space, but it might be a different space where I'm just like, I don't know what's the best thing to buy. Like, is this really what they say it's going to be?
So explain what you mean by health washing. And you said greenwashing.
Greenwashing and health washing. It's basically making a product appear to be better for the environment or better for you than it really is.
So the classic example would just be a package of chicken breasts in the grocery store that has a picture of green grass
on it, because that's not regulated. So
even though that chicken never saw the sunlight and never doesn't know what
so
green
you as a
is,
consumer, you're like, oh, look, this is a nice
green grass and blue skies. That's
picture of a chicken outside. it doesn't have to reflect what the actual product is.
This chicken
Or
never
like
saw green grass.
pasture raised, they could use that term even though it's like a small little confined
just
area.
access to the outdoors.
It was for 2 days. They were in the pasture, and then they got put into the crates.
So everybody wanted organic to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's when organic. When was it genuine? Would you say? I don't. Was it like the 80s or something? I don't know the exact year, but Whole Foods. That's when Whole Foods was really big. And then, I mean, several years later, the USDA got on board. I feel like with organic, meaning when I say on board, making the regulations fit the CAFOs.
Okay.
So it's like, what can we call organic that would fit the CAFO model? Well, let's just feed them organic feed. But when you get an organic product, don't you think there's more to it than just the animals eating organic feed? Wouldn't you think that they're maybe raised outside or on pasture or maybe a little bit better?
Most consumers would think that it's raised in a better way, but to your point,
it's fed organic feed.
I mean, I took linguistics in college a little bit and realized that not every word means the same thing. And if you have a lawyer write down, hey, this is the broad definition, so their buddy that makes a shit ton of money can use that term, it all comes back to education and really, truly helping the consumer understand what they're buying and what to look for. So that, to that point, when you walk into the grocery store, are there any things that you should be on the lookout for that you're going to get an actual quality product?
No, I don't think so.
To my point, even the USDA's website about the organic standard shows a beautiful pasture.
Organic is a labeling term that indicates that the food or other agricultural product has been produced through approved methods. The organic standards describe the specific requirements that must be verified by a USDA accredited certifying agent before products can be labeled USDA organic. Okay.
So it's just a third party accreditor that'll come check your farm once a year.
So who was I talking to that was going crazy about the USDA and how, I mean, they're not to say they're in the pockets of these big corporations, because I don't like to feed conspiracy theory concepts, but when you have a giant operation and you can bring in a guy to get approved for something versus the little guy trying to, hey, can you please come out and check my actual quality product? Again, I don't think there's some great cabal of conspiracy. It's just that basic economics dictates that you have an economy of scale. And if you have an advantage, which in their case is they're allowed to just shove pigs stacked, chickens stacked, and get away with it and still claim that things are really on the up and up. When you see the truth, when you see the videos, when you see the actual different in the product once it gets on your table, I don't want to say criminal, but it's definitely
intentionally
deceptive.
Misleading.
Yeah.
Well, so at first it was organic. People were looking for organic, right? And then a lot of consumers realized that, like, maybe organic. I'm talking just when it comes to livestock and meat. I'm not talking about vegetables. Not my forte. But so people kind of caught on that organic isn't exactly maybe what they thought it was, because again, it's just switching the feed. That's the only difference. And a lot of people care about animal welfare and wanting these animals to be outside grazing, how they're meant to be raised. Mm-hmm. And so that's when pasture raised kind of started to take off. And that's when Tanner and I really got into it, where like pasture raised was still like a pretty safe label. Like if it said pasture raised, like you probably most likely got pasture raised meat. But now in the time that we're in, it's still just signing an affidavit to be able to say it's pasture raised. So we started to see a little bit of pasture raised meat in the stores, more on eggs than anything. But when it comes to the meats, there was a chicken company. It was the first that I'd seen that said pasture raised, and that chicken company had all of the labels. I've been following this chicken company for 3 years because I'm like, this is 100% bullshit. Like weirdly kind of stalking them on Instagram, like not commenting, just in the background, like following, taking screenshots, like I'm on to you. Influencers that have 2 million followers saying, this is the best chicken. This is how they raise them. Were they ever at their farm? No. So I'm just like, there's no way that you can be, your chicken is that cheap and truly be pasture raised. There is no way you can buy a 800-acre farm in the mountains of Arkansas, which was an old confinement chicken farm with all the chicken houses still there. And how are you going to make that pasture raised? All the videos basically showed like opening up the sides. You got to think it snows there too. So are those chickens truly pasture raised? Are they really going outside? So they modified, in quotes, modified the barns. I was taking screenshots on Google Earth to see if I can see chickens outside.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I tell you, I had to stop scrolling on Instagram because I just get heated about it because I'm so passionate about it. And I'm so passionate about giving the consumer something that they want and that they're paying for. And it's horrible when a consumer chooses to pay more for what they think of a quality product that's raised on something like social responsibility, like more ethical practices than anything, but not truly get that. And so after following this company, taking all the screenshots, messaged a few times, hey, what about a farm tour? Oh, no, we don't do farm tours because of the avian bird flu. Like, okay. And all of their pictures on Instagram with all chickens out on pasture year round. Keep in mind, it snows. They did post one picture where it was like, birds aren't going out today, and it was the winter, and they were closed up in their barn. Chickens, like, I'm like, this model does not make sense because you got to think about it. Chickens, they poop a lot. So those coops need to rotate. You just can't sell millions of chickens on an 800-acre farm where you just open up the sides. The grass isn't going to grow back when you're literally raising that many chickens in one barn. Like, something is not adding up right. Like, how are you posting all these pictures of like this green grass and like these birds out there and the birds running out of like the coops in the morning? And chickens are not smart. They don't meat birds. Broilers are different than laying hens. Like, when we open up our brooder sometimes, like to let them out, that's meaning when they are very little babies. Like, we kind of like start to introduce them to pasture sometimes before we put them in their mobile range coops when they have enough feather. They don't want to go outside. They're scared. You're like, what is this? And so you see these pictures of these like chickens like running out of these coops, and the owner that's wearing like loafers or something, I don't know, VC funded, like walking through, like looking at all these chickens in this open air barn. And they've got certified humane on their package. They've got the blue and the green label. They've got pasture raised huge. They've got non-GMO. They've got all these verifications. And the company goes out of business and they start to get exposed.
Oh, no.
And the reason I found out is because it came on my Google News about their contract growers frustrated with them because they left them with millions of chickens. So they went and killed all their chickens. Certified humane company killing all these chickens. And so with the news media outlets that were literally like, they had their recorders and they were on the news station, you got to truly see what these barns looked like, not on a marketing page. Confinement chicken barns.
So just
going outside.
Flat out lying to the consumer.
100%. And the company couldn't raise enough money, so they shut their doors in like December. And you got to think about all those influencers that were promoting that chicken. Those grocery stores, like even locally here in Texas, carrying that chicken that says pasture raised. What does a consumer think when they see a pasture raised label? Do they think of them being locked in a confinement barn? It's horrible. Think about all those dollars wasted that could have been spent somewhere else on a truly pasture raised chicken. Yeah. How is that even allowed? What are the repercussions of that? So they got a certified humane label, euthanizing millions of birds because they ran out of money. So I know I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox here, but like, this is how bad it is right now.
No, I can see you're really passionate about it.
Well, and it's not even about the birds though. It is, but it's about the consumers that think that they're paying a higher margin for literally they could have gotten it for half the price and it would have been the same chicken.
Makes me think the only way you can actually verify is, I mean, if you're doing social media, I guess you can fake that too. Like, or can you?
They did.
Yeah, so you won't find labels on our label claims on any of our meat, like organic or non-GMO or pasture raised or regenerative, or because like Catherine mentioned earlier, it's just a constant like chase. It's just a constant, like, the regenerative crowd used to be sustainable.
Well, it's meaningless marketing.
Then it was co-opted by the big companies, and so they're like, okay, we're regenerative now, and pretty soon that'll be co-opted by Tyson and Cargill, and you're just constantly trying to find a differentiator, and it's a losing game. Like, you're never gonna stay ahead of them because once they see a shift in the market and consumer demand, like, they're doing it, and they're not going to do it to the standards that you do, and so the word doesn't mean the same thing people, and it's impossible to define because of that. And so we don't, you'll never see like a label claim on our meat because competing, like we're not necessarily trying to compete with the Tysons of the world. You know, we can't compete with 99-cent chicken breasts. But what we can do is be completely transparent. And when somebody asks us, like, are you non-GMO? No, we're not certified non-GMO, but we follow non-GMO practices. We feed non-GMO feed. You're free to come out to the farm and see what we do. Like, we're 100% transparent. You can stop by. If you want to pick up your meat instead of us shipping it to you, come pick it up at the farm. Like, we'll show you.
I guess that's the only way.
I feel like that's really the only way to.
I think so. We do an annual farm tour.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were welcomed out to, was it White Oaks?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's other farms around there that, I guess if you have nothing to hide, then why wouldn't you have tours?
Yeah. And White Oak has kind of turned their place into more of an agritourism deal. They have cabins, RV spots, like.
They're
that's really
deal.
cool.
Yeah, restaurant on site, cooking all their own meat. It's awesome.
How does your model differ from theirs, or is that something you'd like to grow into?
They started out.
That's a lot.
We'll never be a White
They
Oak.
started out.
I imagine they have a lot of employees.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like our 13. I don't want hundreds.
They started out as wholesale, so they sold Whole Foods their first pound of American grass-fed beef ever.
Oh wow!
And that's kind of the path that they'd been on, I guess, for 15 or 20 years until just recently they started getting into direct to consumer and then really shifted that way during COVID.
Well, they've been in direct consumer a very long time.
But yeah, I think
Focusing
They also
like
had
shift.
wholesale as
Yes.
well. With,
Yeah, I
guess
think
had a partnership
the bulk
with
of it
Amazon,
was
or
wholesale
not Amazon, but Whole Foods.
at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, y'all remind me of Callahan Auto Parts. Y'all don't have a guarantee on the package, but
Tommy Boy.
I just couldn't get that out of my head. I'm not funny, but I like repeating movies I've heard.
But we do stuff like this too. Like that's what Rachel has pulled up as our experience page where, I mean, you can tell what we're posting is seasonal and legit. So like that's winter grass, like, you know, that's happening now. And I send a weekly email of a farm update. It's not just like, this is how our chickens are raised. It's like, this is what happened on the farm this week. Same with social media.
Yeah, you can go to 2 weeks ago and see 14 inches of rain we got and the destruction that caused. Like we're not hiding any of it.
Yeah, you said you lost quite a bit of chickens due to the rain.
Yeah,
That's awful. That's downside of doing what you do is it definitely increases the difficulty level to master mode. Yeah. So 1915 Farm, just at 1915 Farm on Instagram. How do people find you?
Yes, 1915_farm on Instagram, or Facebook's 1915 Farm, or our website is 1915farm.com. So we like to stay in touch with people via our email list. That's like kind of the most latest, up to date, like fun things happening on the farm, fun specials and stuff. So, and then if we ever do any sort of writings or anything like blog posts and stuff, it's to our weekly email list.
I saw that you have merchandise as well. I was pretty upset to see that you don't have koozies because I need some, as y'all can see. So you're working on that, guys. I need a koozie.
Well, get on the marketing department for that.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all taking the time to come out here to the new studio. Y'all were, I think, my second episode ever. I had no idea what I was doing. It was back in the day when I thought it'd be a cool idea to do it over a fire, and maybe someday I'll get back to that. But hopefully you guys had a good experience. Hopefully we're able to educate some people, and hopefully we can get some people checking out your website and seeing if they can get some good meat for themselves as well.
Thank you. It's been
appreciate
a lot of fun.
it. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll talk soon.
I am Woodstock.